Hey y'all, Pastor Jeremy here, and this is our first episode of our book study on Drops Like Stars. A few thoughts on creativity, suffering, and spirituality, and the connectedness between all of them. The first chapter is called The Art of Disruption. And the way this series is going to work, it's only 4 episodes, they'll release on Fridays, is I'll read and experience this book along with you. And at the end, I'll offer some discussion questions. You can react through a response video or by leaving a comment on any of the social media platforms where you find it, be it Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever. Leave a comment and I'll respond and we can have a dialogue in that space. And then we'll do a follow-up video before the next chapter is read. And so I've got my book, I've got my coffee, and I've lit a candle for some book club ambiance. So, this is The Art of Disruption. I know a man who has 2 sons. Both of his sons are married, and both their wives became pregnant in the same year. Out of the 2 pregnancies, one ended in a miscarriage, the other in a healthy baby boy. And so twice in that year, this man I know went to the same hospital, walked down the same hallway with his family. The first time to grieve and mourn, the second to rejoice and celebrate. We live in the hallways, don't we? In the hallways, we've left one room to go to the other. We've sat outside waiting. We've felt that kind of pain and been overwhelmed by that kind of joy. We've all been in the hallways in one way or another, haven't we? Maybe not in the same family, in the same hospital, in the same hallways, but this man with 2 sons, we know his story because his story is our story. Jesus told a story about a man who had 2 sons. The story begins with the younger son asking for his share of the inheritance, which in first century Jewish culture was a deeply offensive request. The equivalent of saying, "Dad, I wish you were dead." One odd way to begin a story. What's even more unusual is that the father grants his request. The son leaves with the money and eventually spends it all. In his humiliation and poverty, the son decides to head home where he hopes to get work as one of his father's servants. But when he arrives home, he isn't shunned or punished or treated as a servant. His father rushes out to welcome and embrace him, and then throws a party for him. Normally, on an occasion like this, a lamb would be sacrificed for the meal, which would be enough for a family. But the father in this story has a calf prepared, which would be enough for the whole village. Apparently, the consequences of the son's departure were so destructive that he needed to be reconciled with the whole community. This celebration infuriates the older brother. He refuses to join the party and instead argues the injustice of it all to their father, who responds, "My son, you are always with me and everything I have is yours, but we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found." The older brother then has a moment of profound enlightenment. He puts his arm around his father and says, "You're right, Dad. I'm sorry I've been such an ass. Can I get you a beer?" Actually, that's not how the story ends. The story ends with the father's words about how everything he has belongs to his son and how they have to celebrate because his son was dead and is alive again. And that's it. That's how the story ends. The father's words hanging in the air, and we never learn what the elder brother decided to do. What an odd way to end a story. If this was a film, it would end with the father's words and the camera would pan to black. It would show us the party in the background. You'd hear the clanking of silverware and laughter and the thump of the bass drum on the dance floor. And the screen would fade to black and the credits would roll. Jesus leaves the story unresolved. We never find out what the older brother decided to do. Jesus doesn't give the story the proper Hollywood ending that we've all come to expect. The story is unresolved. You can picture one more scene, can't you? The older brother enters the party and the younger brother is surrounded by people who want to talk to him, but see his brother and he says to them, "Just a minute, please." And the younger brother, as he starts walking towards his brother, and the orchestra music in the background gets louder and louder as they get closer and closer until they embrace. And everyone at the party circles around them and starts clapping, and the camera pans over for one last shot. A shot of the father holding a glass of champagne with a smile on his face and a tear in his eye. But that's not how it always goes, is it? Some elder brothers never join the party. Some fathers never throw one. Some brothers never come home. Some things never get resolved. Lots of parties are missing somebody. And when we try to resolve things too quickly, or pretend that everyone is there when they aren't, or offer hollow, superficial explanations, it's not honest, and it's not right, and it's not real. It's not how life is. I've heard people trying to be helpful in the midst of tragedy or accident or death saying, "That's just how God planned it." Well, I'm thinking, the God that planned that is not a God I want anything to do with. Others with far more wisdom and experience than me have tackled the why questions of suffering. Here, in these pages, I'm interested in a different question, not the why. Not why this, but rather, what now? This is a standard question on undergraduate college applications. In order for the admissions staff of our college to get to know you, the applicant, better, we ask that you answer the following question. Are there any significant experiences you have had or accomplishments you have realized that have helped to define you as a person? An applicant named Hugh Gallagher sent this response to NYU, New York University. This is spectacular. I am a dynamic figure, often seen scaling walls and crushing ice. I've been known to remodel train stations on my lunch breaks, making them more efficient in the areas of heat retention. I translate ethical slurs for Cuban refugees. I write award-winning operas. I manage time efficiently. Occasionally, I tread water for 3 days in a row. I woo women with my sensuous and godlike tambourine playing. I can pilot bicycles up severe inclines with unflagging speed, and I cook 30-minute brownies in 20 minutes. I am an expert in stucco, a veteran in love, and an outlaw in Peru. Using only a hoe and a large glass of water, I once single-handedly defended a small village in the Amazon basin from a horde of ferocious army ants. I played bluegrass cello. I was scouted by the Mets. I am the subject of numerous documentaries. When I am bored, I build large suspension bridges in my yard. I enjoy urban hang gliding. On Wednesdays after school, I repair electrical appliances free of charge for my community. I'm an abstract artist, a concrete analyst, and a ruthless bookie. Critics worldwide swoon over my original line of cordial evening wear. I don't perspire. I am a private citizen, yet I receive fan mail. I have been called number 9. I have been caller number 9 and have won the weekend passes. Last summer, I toured New Jersey with a traveling centrifugal force demonstration. I bat a 400. My deft floral arrangements have earned me fame in international botany circles. Children always trust me. I can hurl tennis rackets at small moving objects with deadly accuracy. I once read Paradise Lost, Moby Dick, and David Copperfield in one day and still had time to refurbish the entire dining room that evening. I know the exact location of every food item in the supermarket. I have performed several covert operations with the CIA. I sleep once a week. When I do sleep, I sleep in a chair. While on vacation in Canada, I successfully negotiated with a group of terrorists who had seized a small bakery. The laws of physics do not apply to me. I balance, I weave, I dodge, I frolic, and my bills are all paid on time. On weekends, I let off steam by participating in full contact origami. Years ago, I discovered the meaning of life, but forgot to write it down. I've made extraordinary 4-course meals using only a toaster oven. I breed prize-winning clams. I have won bullfights in San Juan, cliff diving competitions in Sri Lanka, and spelling bees at the Kremlin. I have played Hamlet. I have performed open heart surgery. I have spoken with Elvis, but I have not yet gone to college. Brilliant, isn't it? What is it that makes this essay so enjoyable? Clearly, the content is striking itself. It's weird and smart and imaginative. Full contact origami. And random. Touring New Jersey with a traveling centrifugal force demonstration. And oddly poetic, all at once. But it isn't just the what, the content. It's also about the where. It's on a college application, which is generally where people are their most serious, trying to impress the admissions staff with their eloquence and achievements, not boasting of how they woo women with their sensuous and godlike tambourine playing. There's a phrase we use when we're describing something we consider new and fresh and unexpected. We say it's out of the box. The problem with this phrase is that when something or someone is judged to be out of the box, it reveals that the box is still our primary point of reference. We're still operating within the prescribed boundaries and assumptions of how things are supposed to be. Out of the box is sometimes merely another way of being in the box. And then there are those like this applicant who come from a totally different place. They ask another kind of question. There's a box? Didn't even know there was a box. In 1941, in a village in Nazi-controlled Poland, a young woman came home to discover that her father had died while he was at work. What made his father's death exceedingly more unbearable was that several years earlier, both this young man's sister and mother had died. As he held his father's dead body in his arms, he lamented, "I'm all alone. At 20, I've already lost all the people I've loved." One writer describes it like this: "Ripped out of the soil of his background, his life could no longer be what it used to be. He now began a journey to deeper communion with God. But it didn't come without tears, and it didn't come without what seems to have been certain existential horror." Suffering can do that to us. We're jolted, kicked, prodded, and shoved into new realities we would have never brought about on our own. We're forced to imagine a new future because the one we were planning on is gone. The key word here is, of course, imagine. The young Polish man, sitting on the floor with his dead father in his arms, was having all of his boxes smashed to pieces. His life could no longer be what it used to be. Pop quiz, multiple choice question. If we went to a performing arts center on a Saturday night, and as we walked in, noticed that everyone was dressed backstage. I'm going to start that over again. I messed it up. If we went to a performing arts center on a Saturday night, and as we walked in, we noticed that everyone was dressed up, and backstage there was various performers pacing back and forth in tights and slippers, and they had Russian last names, we would know that we were at A, the rodeo, B, an insurance convention, C, the grand opening of a new hair salon, or D, the ballet. The location and the time and the close of this event are what art theorists call insulators. Insulators frame an event, providing context and helping determine the meaning of the experience for us. If we went to a ballet and everyone in the audience was wearing snorkels, or the musicians were all red-haired banjo players with no teeth, or instead of being handed a program, we were immediately handed a squirrel, we would be asking, what is this? But the real question would be, where is this? Where do we put this? How do we place it? Because our standard reference point's the box. The usual insulators would not be there to guide us. That's often what happens when we suffer. We had things well planned. We knew what meant what. We had all our boxes properly organized and labeled, but all of that was disrupted when we began to suffer. So out of the box, which is often merely a variation of the same thing. And then there are those who think and feel and live and create from a different place. They've had their boxes smashed and their insulators dismantled until they had no other option but to imagine a totally new tomorrow. We call this the art of disruption. Hugh Gallagher, the applicant at NYU, of course was accepted to NYU, and that young Polish man, his name was Karol Józef Wojtyła. we would later know him as Pope John Paul II. Catherine of Aragon said, "None get to God but through trouble." That is chapter 1, the art of disruption. A few thoughts and questions. What hallways do you find yourself in now? Where do you find yourself waiting? And how does it feel to be in that space? Have you ever encountered the parable of the prodigal son as unfinished or unresolved before? How does that help you think about places in your life where you're waiting? Things in your life that currently feel unresolved? What kind of story might Jesus be telling there? And I'm particularly interested in that first chapter and the difference between asking, why is this happening to me? And asking a question, what am I going to do next? How is this setting us up to go somewhere else? Perhaps the struggle of this moment is setting us up for creativity or new ventures, things that we wouldn't otherwise consider. And lastly, the concept of the box. We often use that language in church world of in the box and out of the box thinking. A lot of people are talking about how churches are having to think out of the box right now to engage with their communities and keep their people connected. But maybe the box isn't the best reference point. Maybe right now, normal isn't what we should be going for. How can we, this is a not rhetorical question, how can we as a community, as a church, as a people, be creative in our love and connection and community with each other? Not trying to recreate normal, but trying to find a new space. Where might God be calling us as a church? Where might God be calling you as an individual? As I said, you can leave responses. You could do a video response. You could leave a comment on this video, wherever you find it, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever it is, and we'll have the conversation going from there. Next Friday, we'll read chapter 2, and we'll keep it going. Grace and peace, y'all. Thanks for watching.